All right, so we got another power station here on the desk. It's called the Pecron E600. Let's go ahead and take it out of the box and see what we got. All right, so right off the bat at the top, we got a case. It's got a user manual. It's an MC4 connector. I'm not sure what connector type this is. An Anderson to that same connector type. And we have a standard wall connector, cigarette lighter adapter. Again, here's that same connector. And this is the power brick. And looks like this one is 42 volts, 7 amps. Alright, so let's take a look at everything out of the box now. So here's the case with all the cables and the wall adapter to charge up the power station. And power station itself, we have some air vents there, some fans, cooling fans on the left here, and got some also on the right. On the top here we got a handle, so pull that out to carry the power station around, and then you have a wireless charging pad here. This is a 15 watt standard wireless charging pad for your phones and AirPods, etc. Solid display here, DC out on and AC out on over here. These on off buttons, just long press, turn on the display, and I did charge this up a little bit, 94%. Has some information, we'll go into that here more in a bit. You got your 3 AC outputs here, up to 1200 watts looks like. I think it bursts higher, but 1200 watts here. Although this is a smaller power station, around 600 watt hours. Usually the AC output's around 600 watts. They try and match that, but this one has a little bit higher, so it's a bit nicer than usual there. DC up here, so a cigarette lighter port standard there, 5525 plugs here for 12 volt out and on the DC side, and then you have USB-C 100 watts and 18 watts, and then you have USB-A 18 watts and 18 watts. So this is quick charge 3.0, I believe, power delivery here on this one, and I think this one is just quick charge on the USB-C here. And then the inputs, you have these flaps, and I think this one here is a 5521 input, and looks like it's 12 to 18 volts, 100 watts max. And then on this one here is another input, 32 to 95 volts, 400 watts max. And this is, I think, where the solar panel input is. It's this strange 5-pin connector that is coming from the wall adapter. So that's how you're going to charge up the power station. And this one here, yeah, this one outputs 42 volts at 7 amps. So I guess to cover all the specific numbers, best to go through the user manual so I don't miss anything important. Again, diagram showing all of the different plugs and everything on the front. So capacity, as I expected, about 600 watt hours, 614 watt hours. And this is lithium iron phosphate, or LFP technology, or cells are in this one. So this one does give you a little bit more cycles, about 3,500, versus lithium ion I think is under 1,000. So this is where most of the power stations are going these days, to the LFP technology. It gives you a longer life for the power station. Interesting charging time is 1.5 hours by solar panels, but 2.2 hours by AC charger. I think that's because of the fact you can probably input more via solar with a lot of solar panels versus the AC wall adapter that's included. I think that's why they'll probably see that a little bit later. Standard protection here: over voltage, overheating, overload, short circuit, and self-recovery. Here are the dimensions and the weight. It's about 20 pounds. Here are all the plugs, as I mentioned before. I believe I covered all the numbers already. Cigarette port is 12 volts, 10 amps, and then the 5525 outputs are 12 volts at 5 amps, 15 watts on the wireless charger. And the 2 input ports, it does not support charging from both input ports at the same time. And it also doesn't look like the USB-C, any one of those, is also an input. So it just lists this as an output only. On some power stations, you can also charge via USB-C. It doesn't look like that works on this one. But the 2 input ports here, this is that strange 5-pin ports called the GX16MF, and 32 to 95 volts, maximum of 400 watts. And then the 5521 DC charging 12 to 18 volts, maximum of 100 watts. So it just gives some details on solar charging here. I don't have these solar panels, so I can't demonstrate these. And these are the ones that come from Pecron, I believe, are 36 volt solar panels. Typically, most solar panels are around 18 volts. So this is a bit non-standard, but they have these MC4 charging cables. And if you use one solar panel at 200 watts, it's 3 to 4 hours to charge it up the power station. And if you go two solar panels at 400 watts, it's 1.5 to 2.5 hours. So it does actually outline here specifically how to charge up these solar panels. It's using these Pecron branded ones. So they have these 100 watt ones are 18 volts, and that will work with that 5521 connector. But then they have these 200 watt panels at 36 volts, and these are bigger ones here. And then when you use these 36 volt panels, you plug it into these Anderson connectors. That's one of the adapters that are included. Then you plug it into that GX16 port over here. And yeah, so obviously I'm not going to be able to test that. They didn't send me the solar panels, but you can, looks like, get 2 of these Pecron 200 watt panels here at 36 volts each. I think this is they're connecting this in series up to 72 volts, and then that's going to give you the lowest charging time, which is actually, I think, more watts coming in via solar, assuming you have full sunshine. That's going to be higher than your AC wall adapter. All right, so I've concluded my testing, and I did do the AC inverter test with the hot pot, and that works because I think that one only uses about 500 watts, no problem. I also did the hot air gun. That's also only roughly 400 watts, I believe, 400 or 500 watts. So I believe that the inverter in here is actually a 600 watt inverter, and it bursts to 1200 watts. So they're saying it's a 1200 watt inverter. I think it's a 600 watt inverter in this one. And when I did the hairdryer test, when I went to the first heat setting, which basically initially will go, it'll jump up to like 1400, 1500 watts. The AC over current protection kicks in, and then the inverter shuts off. So did not pass the hairdryer test because it does burst over 1200 watts. So if you're in the 600 to 1200 watt range, it should be okay for short amounts of time. But I think I would only trust this one for 600 watts and below if you want to use it for continuously, say more than like 10 minutes. Maybe for short amounts of time, you might be able to go higher. But yeah, and when I did try a thing like of course that's it's going to burst over over 1,000 watts or 1,200 watts like the hairdryer. The overcurrent protection kicks in and the inverter shuts off. Now, and interestingly, the fans for the inverter only kick on when you first turn it on, like so. And then anything that's below about 600 watts, the fan never comes on, which is kind of unusual. Usually the fans kick on right away, so it's kind of a nice feature. If you don't want a lot of noise and not going to be drawing a lot of power from the inverter, this inverter does not, at least the fan doesn't kick in until you go above 600 watts. So kind of nice to see. And then they have a little meter here that shows how much output, and it goes from like 0 to 100%. And when I was doing the hot pot, it was around 50%, which is around 500 watts. So it can burst to 1200, but I don't think it can do it continuously. So I found something a little peculiar about the way the DC output works here. So as you can see, it's at 69 watts output right now, and I'm on the 100 watt USB-C, which is actually charging up this other power station here via USB-C power delivery, 65 watts. So it's a little bit more. Now, nothing else is actually charging. I have other cables plugged in, but if I plug in something on this port here, which is to the right, this is 18 watt USB-A to the right of the USB-C, which is just something that uses like standard, I think like 5 watts. You can see the output power drops down, and it still says it's charging here, but Now it's only, it dropped down from like 68 to like 28 watts. So maybe it's readjusting, but it doesn't seem like when it's sharing charging across these two ports, it doesn't want to go back up. Now, strangely, if I go to the bottom port here instead, so unplug everything. So when you unplug something, it seems like everything resets and then the power drops. So if something was charging, it stops charging, and then it'll start recharging. And you can see I'm back up to 77, and I'm charging the goggles here and the power station on these two ports. So this is an 18 watt and an 18 watt, but I'm on the bottom USB-A, and now we're back up to full power. So apparently it's shared across these two here. And also, if I plug in something on the bottom here, it seems like it resets as well. So some kind of peculiar, maybe it's a maximum of 100 watts total or something like that across all 4 channels. It's not clearly explained in the manual, so I just wanted to show this to you. It's still something that I noticed that I haven't seen in other power stations. Now, this seems to be the maximum amount of output power I can get without using that 18 watt port here. I have all 3 of these connected. This one is this 100 watt port's charging the other power station. 18 watt port is charging these goggles, and this other 18 watt USB-C port is charging up this Mavic Mini 3 Pro. And I've got the wireless charging on the phone up top here, which adds right now, the phone is mostly charged, so about 10 extra watts, so about 100 watts total just on DC. Now I probably could go more if I have some other devices like a cigarette lighter and then this 5525 plug, which I don't have. But yeah, it's very odd. If you have this and this one plugged in at the same time charging 2 things, this one seems to drop in power. So if you want to use 100 watts, then don't plug anything into the USB-A on the right side there. So unfortunately, I was not able to do a solar panel test. I don't have an adapter for this plug type. I do have some 18 volt panels, but all the ones that I have are different plugs, and this one doesn't come with any adapters, unfortunately. It would be nice if they supplied some adapters from other connector types, because I don't have they only provided one for an Anderson connector, and I don't currently have a panel that has that. I have panels with other types of connectors. So unfortunately, yeah, it would be nice if they had additional adapters for other plug types included. They only have the one, so unfortunately I was not able to do the 18 volt test. And then of course I don't have any of the larger 36 volt panels that these guys provide. So yeah, if you're curious about that, you'll have to contact the manufacturer about that. That's going to do it for this review video. I think that for this particular model, I would watch the price. I think that for something in this capacity, around 600 watts or watt hours with around a 600 watt inverter, I think competitively, probably anything under like 350, 300 is probably what most things are going for these days. I think this is currently priced more like a Jackery, which I think, if you're going to price it like a Jackery, you might as well get a Jackery, but their prices might change. So check the link and see what the current price is. I'm sure there's coupon codes and stuff like that and promotions going on, but currently I believe it's priced a bit high. But again, when you're watching this video in the future, the price might be different. So click the link, see what the price is like, and compare it to some other 600 watt inverter power stations with around 600 watt hours of capacity. And currently at the time of this video, they're running around 350, 400, somewhere in there. And it really depends on the brand and stuff like that. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.